Good evening, and welcome to the second meeting of the month of June for the St. Cloud School Board. Today is June 21st. It's 7 p.m., and I will call to order the meeting of the St. Cloud School Board. Our mission is to create a safe and caring climate and culture in which we prepare, engage, educate, empower, and inspire all learners in partnership with their surrounding community to be successful in today's and tomorrow's society. Mr. Mose, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and now could you call roll?
Al Dahlgren.
Here.
Jeff Pulrice.
Here.
Shannon Hawes.
Here.
Monica Segura Schwartz.
Here.
Bruce Henches.
Here.
Jerry Von Korf. Here. Bruce Moses here. Mr. Chair, the record will show that we are joined this evening by Superintendent of Schools Willie Jett, Assistant Superintendent of Schools Marcia Beisch, Executive Director of Teaching and Learning Laurie Posch, Executive Director of Student Services and Special Education Carol Potter, Executive Director of Business Services Amy Scalarud, Executive Director of Human Resources Tracy Flynn Bowe, pardon me. And absent this evening is our Gary Ganji and Tammy DeLand, and I don't yet see Adam Holm.
Thank you, Bruce. First up on tonight's agenda is the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of non-controversial items that the board routinely adopts without debate. Any single member of the board may remove an item from the consent agenda by requesting removal at the time the consent agenda is moved for adoption. The full text of items can be found at the end of the agenda. On tonight's consent agenda, we have item A, approval of tonight's agenda. B, approval of the minutes for the meetings of May 24th and June 13th. C, approval of the monthly treasurer's report for May 2018. D, acceptance of the monthly financial report for May 2018. E, approval of the payment of bills and other financial transactions in the grand total amount of $9,378,477.08. F, approval of personnel and staff changes. G, acceptance of grant, awards, and donations. H, approval of student handbooks 2018-19. I, Quarry View Education Center change orders totaling plus $7,188. J, Tech High School new site change orders totaling plus $877,627.30. And item K, approval of a resolution for membership in the Alliance for Liability and Property Services. Is there anyone who would like to remove an item from this evening's agenda? Jeff?
Item J, please, Al.
Jeff would like to remove item J, the Tech High School new site change orders totaling plus $877,627.30. And Bruce?
And Mr. Chair, I would ask to remove letter K.
Item K, approval of resolution for membership in the Alliance for Liability and Property Services. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda minus items J and K.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda minus items J and K.
And I'm looking for a second.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on the items that are up for approval, A through I? If not, I would like to let the board know that I'm going to recuse myself on a portion of item G, acceptance of grants, awards, and donations for a donation that I had made to Kennedy. Other than that, we have a motion and a second. No discussion. Mr. Mose, would you call roll?
Maker of the motion, Bruce Henches.
Yes.
Second maker, Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Jeff Pulrice.
Yes.
Monica Segura Schwartz.
Yes.
Jerry Von Korf.
Yes.
Bruce Mose, yes.
Thank you. Now, item J, Tech High School, new site change orders totaling plus 877,627. Jeff?
I just wanted to have a discussion on the concession stand part of that, Jay. I thought that students were going to get an educational opportunity and the district was going to save money and we were going to do it that way. And now it's included in other cement work, $500,000. Seems like a pretty high price tag. And I apologize, my computer doesn't work even after it's been plugged in. So I don't have all the details right in front of me, but.
I agree, Jeff. I was shocked today when I was looking through this again, and I know that the $877,000 change order came up in the Finance Committee. I don't remember specifically talking about the full cost of the concession stand, but I too feel like it's $477,000 for the structure of the concession stand and ticket booth. And to me, when I think of what you can build for $477,000, when you're looking at a 1,200 to 1,400 square foot building, I can't see how you could possibly spend almost $500,000 on that. And I did talk today with both David Leopold and Andy Faulkner, and I guess I didn't really feel like the answers that I got from them were necessarily satisfactory to me. I didn't feel good about it after talking to them. The answer was basically that it's very expensive to construct those types of buildings because there's a lot of plumbing and a lot of electrical and things. But again, it's $500,000 and it's a very small building. So I just struggle with that. Bruce? Henches?
Mr. Mose had his hand up. I'll
Okay.
defer
Bruce
to him
Mose?
first.
Well, I was just calculating this another way, Mr. Chair, and if that, using the $477,000 and I used the 1,300 square feet, be $367 per square foot. I don't know where that is in relation to other buildings or facilities of that size and purpose, but that's just the way it comes out on the calculator.
Yeah, I guess I just feel like, yes, Jerry? Oh, just feel like we need more detail or some assurances that the prices that we're paying, it just seems like we're getting taken on this one.
So I do, yes, and yeah, I'm wondering if this is something that would be better to be tabled, and maybe you guys in the Finance Committee spend a little bit more time. I mean, these add-ons sometimes begin with taking the unit cost of the thing you're already building and then extending it over and making some judgments. And sometimes when you do that, it comes out okay, and sometimes it doesn't make sense. But I mean, we could be here. We don't have I don't think we have the people here if this is something that has to be built right away. But I mean, it's a standalone thing. It feels like it could even be built next year. So do we know whether we could table this and come back?
Well, the one thing I do want to clarify is change orders come to the board for formal approval, but change orders are as long as they're budgeted, and so this line item for the outbuildings was budgeted, was part of the bid award budget presentation at the January design committee meeting as well as the January board meeting. So the intention to move forward with the buildings had received prior approval. And so at the time construction progresses, we don't bring every change order to the board prior to progressing with work just because of time. We wouldn't complete our project deadline. Everything gets approved through the district administration, through architects, construction managers, kind of in the field so that we can proceed with the project as planned. So in this instance, the footings and foundations are already in, and then other materials have been ordered. Not to say that there aren't, portions of it that potentially could be revisited, or that we could do a detailed analysis of that cost breakdown. We have all of that information that the construction managers could provide.
Al? Oh.
Chad?
I brought this issue forward earlier today myself with a concern, first because it seemed like a lot of money for a concession stand, but also because I thought I had remembered, as Jeff stated, that the proposal had been that the school construction trades kids might be able to build some of these facilities. Now, when I talked to Amy today, she reminded me that the design committee had reviewed this concept in early January, and 2 days later, the board approved it. Now, unfortunately, I was out of the district on both of those because of the family health emergency, and so my responsibility would have been to have noticed that in the minutes of both meetings previously. But the context in which I looked at that from was that much for a concession stand, and we still have not made a decision yet regarding what we're going to do with our gymnastics program for Tech High School. That perhaps if we are frugal with some of the add-ons or alternate bid items that have been discussed and were discussed at those meetings, that we might be able to generate some funds to complete the high school and include the gymnastics gym in it. So that was the context in which I was looking at this. It is still a hope that I have that we might be able to save enough money in the construction of that building to complete the building so that all programs that exist at the current Tech High School will exist as they currently do in the new high school. That's kind of my background and context to this issue.
Jerry?
Mr. Chair, I'm really confused. I know that we had alternates, but this item must have come to the agenda committee. It got on the agenda. It went to the finance committee, and here it is, and you're asking for our approval. Why are we being asked to approve it if we've already approved it? I mean, I don't think that's what our approval was, but I'm just really confused as to, this is a $500,000 item. I still think, so is the answer that we can't table it? We have to vote yes, we have no choice? Is that kind of where we are?
I think that we can table it. We may not be able to table things that have been done. If the foundation is in, we probably can't table the foundation, but we could certainly table any additional forward progress on it. I think when the discussions, Bruce, about the students building it were happening, I don't know if that was about the concession stand so much. The concession stand is going to be a brick building with lots of plumbing and things in it. I don't think that the students would be able to do that one.
And I did look back at the notes from the design committee where it was discussed, and the notes from the design committee meeting specify that the ticket booth and concession stand would be done by the on-site contractors, and that the maintenance building and the team room building were the buildings that would be done by the student.
Right, and my understanding
program.
on the outbuildings when we were looking at that big number was that it was going to be several buildings, not all on a concession stand. But Monica?
I'd like to make a motion to table the Tech High School new site change order item J in the agenda until the Finance Committee can make a satisfactory recommendation to the board.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I've had this kind of discussion before, and I think the other thing that ought to come back is some clarification of what the board has to do before things happen. And because when it isn't clear, then it leads to misunderstandings. People don't intentionally do something that the board has to do before they do it. But this is a big project, and it appears to me that there's a lack of clarity between ourselves and others as to when things need to get approved and when they don't, and that really ought to get fixed.
I would agree. If you're looking at me for clarity, I'm confused on that also. So, Shannon?
It was my understanding that we approved putting the foundations in for the concession stand and the ticket, but not approved building them. And it was also my understanding that then we were going to see if we came under budget, what we could approve. With gymnastics being tabled, it was my understanding that two possibilities existed to fund them. One was the money that we saved by buying the redirecting our district offices, not in the old Tech High School. That was one possibility. And the second possibility for funding gymnastics was if we became under budget in designing Tech High School. Now, my concern is that we have these change orders and we keep spending money, like adding on lights to the baseball field, and now this concession stand, we continue to spend the money. Well, where in the discussion of coming under budget does gymnastics come after we've spent all the money?
Jeff?
I kind of want to echo that same thought. I mean, my recollection was we approved to have the cement put in, the plumbing plumbed, the electrical, so the kids could take the project and run with it. It'd be less intensive for them that way. And we did add $400,000 or $500,000 for lights. We did add $400,000 or $500,000 to put rock under the softball fields. Those are not basic needs in my book. Those are add-ons. Swimming's taken care of, basketball, all the other ones are, the basic needs are taken care of. Gymnastics, to me, is a basic need, and I think it's being forgotten, and pretty soon, like Shannon said, there won't be any money left to fulfill that basic need. So I would support Monica's thing. Let's table this and let's figure this out.
Yeah. I mean, Jeff, just to clarify too, and Bruce, but I don't remember giving any go-ahead in the design committee for the concession stand. I remember holding money. We had a budget for buildings and grounds, and within that there was money held back for outbuildings, but I don't remember giving any green lights on that. Bruce?
Amy did send me the minutes of that meeting today, and I can't remember the wording of it, but having read the minutes, I went, okay, that now I understand that there was an approval, I guess, at least as I read it, it seemed to be an approval to move forward with the concession stand and ticket booth. Now, I don't know if that came to the school board or not, because again, I was absent from that meeting and I haven't had a chance to review it.
No one's suggesting, I take it, that the design committee gets to spend $500,000 without jumping through another hoop, right? We're all in agreement of that. Okay.
Bruce Mose?
Mr. Chair, just an inquiry to the maker of the motion, Monica Segura Schwartz. Does this tabling of this motion have a time frame or a time stamp on it when it comes back off the table?
My motion was to resend the, give me a second. It was the same, it was to resend the motion was to table the item J from the agenda until the Finance Committee can make a satisfactory recommendation to the board. That will give you the time will given by the Finance Committee.
Thank you.
I think we should refine that to the concession stand within, the concession stand and ticket booth within item J. Item J was $877,000.
Correct.
Worth, and some of those are things that are going to happen there.
Yeah, some of those other,
Structural changes.
Correct.
Yeah, so I think we have to go ahead with some of those, but I think we should table the concession stand portion until the July meeting.
If the mover will clarify her motion, I seconded it, right? I will resecond.
Okay, Monica, do you want me to clarify or Monica? I think
I am
Monica
the making
is-
of the motion. So let me just check what you're asking me to do. I'll appreciate your friendly reminder. What you want to amend the motion?
I would amend it to the items pertaining to the concession stand and ticket booth within item J on the consent agenda.
And I have that amount available if you want to specify the amount.
It's, yeah,
So the amount related to concession stand and ticket booth is $474,984.98.
yes. So that's what we would table
And then
to the July meeting.
Can you tell me which of these items then we are approving? What's left?
So the remaining change orders, there was a number, the next biggest item in the change orders was some changes to some science and special education areas within the building. There's a spreadsheet attached in your board agenda that lists all of the different reasons and the dollar amounts for the change order, but that was the largest. There was also some changes from the state plan review, changes for some lighting changes, some changes in the pool area for glazing. So there's about 20 different other categories of reasons, but the next largest piece is that special education and science classroom changes.
When I'm looking at this PDF that I opened here in Board Book, there is several change order number ones that the word concession stand and ticket booth appears several times in these, throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, there's a second attachment that's a PDF. You kind of have to zoom it in because it's a big, wide spreadsheet.
And then
It's-
down at the bottom, the very last line is the concession stand, so it'd be all of the items contained within that one.
But, Mr. Chair, am I correct that there's about to be two motions, the one that's on the table to table, and then after that motion, there'll be another motion to approve the remaining items?
Let me just withdraw my motion, and you can make your motion the way that you want it. I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay, so then we're looking for a motion to approve. Let's first approve. Now, first let's table. Looking for a motion to table item J, all items related to the concession stand and ticket booth in a total of, Amy?
$474,984.98.
Exactly.
I so move.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it, Al.
We have a motion and a second
And the tabling was till the finance.
till well, it's tabled for the Finance Committee to look at, but until the next scheduled board meeting, which is the second meeting in July.
Who made the motion? Jerry, okay. And Jeff, you made the second?
Okay, motion second. Any discussion further?
Al, do you have a calendar in front of you? Which happens first, our board meeting or finance?
Finance is first.
Finance.
Is it the day before?
I believe it's the week before.
We might want to at least make sure it's a week before.
Yeah.
In fact, we can move that up if we need to, Amy, to earlier in July, but I suppose people are on vacation.
Finance committee is scheduled for the 19th, and the board meeting is the following week. So
24th, I think. So, okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. No further discussion. Mr. Moses, call roll.
Maker of the motion, Jerry Van Corf.
Yes.
Second maker, Jeff Fulrice.
Yes.
Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Bruce Henches.
Yes.
Monica Seguda Suarez.
Yes.
Bruce Mose, yes.
Okay, then the second one is a motion to approve item J on the consent agenda. Tech High School new site change orders totaling plus $877,627.30, minus the items related to the concession stand and the ticket booth totaling.
So the total with that subtracted is $402,642.32. That will be
that's-
that'll be the total of the change orders that are being approved.
Okay. So we have, that's our motion. Or that's what we're looking for a
You're looking
motion
for a motion.
for.
Okay,
Mr. Mose, did you move?
I'll second your motion.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion, second. Bruce?
And first maker of the motion, Bruce Henches.
Yes.
Second maker, Bruce Mose. Yes. Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Jerry Van Korf.
Yes?
Monica Seer Schwartz.
Yes.
Jeff Fulrice.
Yes.
Al Dahlgren.
Yes. Okay, next, we're going to move on to item K, which was the approval of a resolution for membership in the Alliance for Liability and Property Services. And I'm going to give that one to Bruce Henches.
Sure. Well, it's more of a clarification. I believe this item was added to the agenda today, or recently. I believe it was today, but, and so I didn't know that I totally understood the implications of it. I had not received the Finance Committee minutes yet, and so I did see that the Finance Committee has approved this, and the recommendation is coming for approval. I think that it's a significant enough issue, and especially when this district has been connected with a particular insurance company for many, many years, that we have some discussion of it and explanation, I guess, of it prior to the vote of the board. Is that Alexi that wants some answers?
I think I'll turn it over to Amy. Amy, if you want to give an explanation.
Yes, I'll give a little bit of background. The ELPS group is a group of currently six districts. The current members are Minnetonka, Hopkins, Rosemount, Apple Valley, Egan, Stillwater, Mounds View, and Duluth. And so they join a cooperative purchasing group, if you will, to purchase collectively property and liability insurance. It's a self-funded pool. However, it's self-funded to an extent. Each member district contributes a portion to the loss fund every year. How much each district is contributing is determined by a third-party independent actuarial company based on claims history and the size of the district, the property valuations. And then the group purchases kind of excess coverage insurance to cover anything above and beyond the obligation of the loss fund. So in a year where the loss fund is depleted, the excess coverage that the group purchases would kick in and cover that. So it's really a non-assessable, if you've heard the term assessable. The loss fund, the member districts, in a year where that fund was depleted, wouldn't be invoiced or obligated for additional expenses. That excess policy coverage that's purchased would cover anything that the loss fund doesn't cover. So we were invited to join the group. We received pricing from that group based on our claims history, our coverage, and then we also received pricing under our existing policy, our existing carrier, and the savings was approximately $40,000, which is about a 12% savings. And in addition, the policy under the ELPS program includes higher coverage limits and lower deductibles for most of the lines of coverage.
Would this be similar to our self-insured health insurance plan, where we are self-insured up to a certain amount and then catastrophic insurance covers?
Similar to an extent, in the effect that you have that kind of catastrophic excess coverage. However, the difference is with our self-insured, the district and employees contribute to that fund, but there's nothing in our health insurance plan that protects us, if you will, if the amount that the district and employees contribute in any given year becomes depleted. We don't have any sort of coverage, it's just in the healthcare policy. We're on the hook for that. It comes from somewhere or that fund goes into deficit. With this, if the amount that's contributed by the districts depletes, that excess coverage kicks in to cover that amount.
And then there would never be a balance to make up, a negative balance to make up because it was a bad year, a tornado ripped through Duluth or wherever one of these places.
Right, because that
are
excess coverage would cover. On the opposite side, if there's years where the loss fund isn't depleted and there's money left, then the member districts decide collectively whether each district receives their pro rata share back kind of as a refund, or in some of the years, they've used that to roll into, to lower their obligation for the next year. So you potentially could receive credits back in a good year, but you wouldn't have to pay in further in a year where, like you said, there might be that catastrophic claim.
That, I'd like to sort of hear that again. Somebody is underwriting this. They're looking at our experience rating. If the costs go up for the pool, surely they're going to raise our rates. Are they not? I mean, they're not guaranteeing the rates. Don't the rates come from the experience rating of the schools that are in the pool?
They do. So if you have a catastrophic loss, it could impact the rates. However, it's a smaller portion of the total covered value. So it has a smaller impact than it would if it were a standalone policy. And a few of the districts, more so on the or one of the districts in particular, the first year that they were actually in existence, had some fairly significant liability claims, and they still, as a group, collectively, only saw a 2% increase into the following year, just because that loss is dollar value-wise a smaller percent on the total covered policy.
Yes, but if the group has collectively a higher experience rating, is that absorbed by the group, or is it absorbed by the member that has the higher?
It's both. So the member that has that higher, that's what that actuarial valuation does, is to determine how much each individual member should be contributing to that loss fund. So a member that has a higher claims experience is going to be contributing a larger share to that loss fund than the other member districts may be contributing.
After we got the quotes, did we give the people we had a chance to try and
Yes.
beat it? And they said that we can't beat it. And who's going to be I mean, I have in mind this organization, who is it that we're just getting out of? Is it?
Ties?
Yes. Is this another one of those where there's going to be a board of people and people will drive down there and either they're competent or they're not? And is somebody here going to be watching them?
Yeah, so
Like we didn't watch the other one.
right. So the key difference is that each member, or the ELPS organization, has a board of directors, and the board of directors is the business representative from each district. So I would serve on that board of directors, and then collectively the 6, 7, however member districts collectively make those decisions. So you're not kind of passing that responsibility off to a board that doesn't have a vested interest specifically in our organization, and it provides that platform to stay involved and know what's going on.
Can we get out at any time, or do we have to pay to get out?
What was the question?
Can we, if we don't like next year's rates, if we discover that they gave us a teaser rate and next year, are we stuck? Do we have to pay a fee to get out? Are we members until we give them 5 years' notice? What's the deal?
So it's a 3-year commitment, and I did, as I mentioned earlier, talk to 3 or 4 of the member districts, and because I had that concern too, and get some of that claims experience, how the loss fund went every year. There hasn't been a year where it's been fully depleted, and they've seen across the board no more than 2% increases year over year. So historically, there hasn't been that concern.
How long has this organization been around?
So it started in 2000, and I apologize, I don't have my folder. I believe it's 2004
Okay.
was the first
So
year
it's
that
not
it
new.
started. Right, so it's not the first year or second year. It's been around for a while.
Jeff?
Just so the rest of the board knows, from what I remember at the briefing too, they're very selective on who they let join. They're not small districts, huge districts. There are a lot of districts our size with our demographics and stuff, so.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? If not, I'm looking for a motion on item J, or K.
I'll make that motion, Al.
So we have a motion, do we have a second? Second, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, Mr. Moses, would you call roll?
Maker of the motion, Jeff Pulrice.
Yes.
Second maker, Monica Segura Schwartz.
Yes.
Terry Bond Korf.
I think I'm going to abstain.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Abstain? Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Bruce Henches.
Yes.
Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Bruce Mose, yes.
Next, we move to information items, and information items this evening, we have a summary of the June work session. Dr. Marcia Beisch.
Good evening, Chair Dahlgren, Superintendent Jett, and members of the board. The session included a presentation by Kennedy Community School. Lori Putnam, principal, along with Alyssa Kyle, science teacher, and students representing various grade levels, shared ways that students and staff are empowered and engaged at Kennedy Community School. Information was shared on the process and planning for the Kennedy Kindness and Unity Day, and students also shared some of the things they enjoyed doing in science and some of their activities, as well as in Science Club. The second item on the agenda was the New Tech High School update. David Leopold, architect with IIW Minnesota, along with Principal Charlie Eisenreich, and Kyle Walter, the on-site project manager from ICS Consulting, presented an update on the progress of the New Tech High School. Principal Eisenreich presented information on the furniture process, noting the sit tests and the subgroup furniture programming meetings, along with an update on the pilot classroom furniture. The pilot classroom will provide opportunities for staff development and obtaining valuable feedback on both the technology and the furniture. David Leopold reviewed discussions regarding the existing Tech High School sign reuse, and Kyle Walter reported on the construction progress at the Tech site and the work in place through May, including both the site work and the building work. He shared photos as usual and a video of the progress. The third item on the agenda was the Quarry View Education Center update. Kiri Ganji, Executive Director of Operations, presented a current progress report, and substantial completion will be reached around July 1st. The fourth item was the St. John's University Outdoor Education Partnership. Dr. Karen Bankston, Science Coordinator, shared information about our district's partnership with St. John's Outdoor University. She explained that the partnership aims to provide positive outdoor environmental educational experiences connected to academic standards and classroom curriculum. This has been going strong for over 20 years. It involves 8 elementary schools and our middle schools. Ms. Bankston, or Dr. Bankston, also reviewed participation numbers along with the program plans for the upcoming school year. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to discussion and action items. First up is an action item. It's the approval of the 2017-2018 revised budget. Amy Scalarud.
Good evening, Chair Dahlgren, Superintendent Jett, members of the board. So I have 2 items in front of the board for approval tonight. The first is the revision for the 2017-18 budget. We went over this in detail last week, so this will just kind of be a quick high-level overview and refresh. And then do want to note, too, that this has also been presented in even greater detail at the Board Finance Committee meeting, as well as the Community Finance Study Group. So looking up, what you have in front of you is the original budget that was approved last spring, the budget adjustments, and the revised budget for the current year that we're just completing. General fund, really not significant revisions in the revenue side between the original and revised budget. Operating capital, there was a budget adjustment of $125,000 to reflect some energy rebates that were received that had not been budgeted. So that's really all we have for the revenue adjustments for the general fund, total general fund, revised budget, then $136,818,090. Moving to other funds, we typically don't see a ton of budget adjustments for other funds throughout the year. We do every year have a budget adjustment for the food service fund. That adjustment this year is $131,667. You'll see when we move to the next slide that there's a corresponding expenditure budget adjustment for the same amount, and those adjustments are to reflect the fresh fruit and vegetable grant that we receive every year. At the time we budget, we don't know if we're going to be approved and what sites we're going to be approved and what that amount will be. Community service, there is a revenue adjustment this year, which is a little bit untypical. That's reflective of some grants that came in that were related to community education, early childhood programming. So there's a budget adjustment of $76,608 for that fund. And the trust fund is our scholarship fund. Every year there's adjustments based once we know how much is coming in and out and being paid out of that fund. So a $34,140 adjustment there. Moving to the expenditure adjustments, we do have a large expenditure budget adjustment for the general fund, just over $7.5 million. That is completely coming out of the assigned fund balance, which we'll see on the next slide, the fund balance projections at the end of the year. There's two big items that are part of that adjustment. The first being the purchase and renovations at the Minnesota School of Business building to relocate the district offices and media services. And then there was also budgets that the board approved to finish the rollout of the one-to-one program to add the second two levels, or the last two grades at the secondary level. Operating capital, budget adjustments during the year. Operating capital includes the long-term facilities maintenance program, and so the majority of that adjustment is what was brought forward to the board for that revised budget just about a month ago, and that was to reflect the amount that wasn't spent from last year. Other funds are really the same things we just talked about on the revenue side. It's just the corresponding offset for the expenses related to those grants and activity. So then fund balance for the year, unrestricted, you will see a drop, and that was budgeted. The original budget did have a spend down of fund balance of approximately $500,000 that, if you recall from last year at this time, was related to a one-time TIF adjustment in the levy. We're actually projecting not that quite as large of a spend down as what was originally budgeted. The bulk of the difference comes in that third line down, general fund assigned for future projects, which is where the $7.5 million we just looked at on the previous slide is coming from. And then the other funds, other than the building construction fund, no significant changes in fund balance. The building construction fund does have a large decrease in fund balance as we start to spend down those proceeds. Are there any questions on the revised budget before?
Jeff?
Amy, community education is in that budget somewhere, correct?
Yes, community education is community services.
Has there been any talk about the reduction that they're going to be taking in starting 2019, 2020 due to the lack or less usable space once we move out of tech? Do you guys think 2 years out, or is it just 1 year out all the time?
So which space at tech?
The gymnastics, tigerettes, all those things. I mean, tech is used for a lot of community ed activities, correct? And that's going away.
The only one that would be necessarily going away is the Tiger Gymnastics, and whatever facility we end up using, my assumption would be that we would host that community ed programming at that facility. However, we don't, like you just mentioned, we don't budget more than 1 year out. And so at this point, this is the revision for this year. And then even as we look at next year, we still have tech, up and running. And so that revenue is still included for next year. We would start to have that conversation as we budget for next year if there's any sort of implication the following year.
Yeah, it's the 600 little kids I was talking about. We don't have a facility with a pit though, so we'd have to,
Really?
something with that, right?
So I'm going to answer the first question that I heard, not specific to gymnastics because Amy just did, but in terms of 2 years out, when the existing tech is no longer there, the other community ed programs that were housed there would now be able to be housed at the new tech, and so there's the flip-flop. So.
Any other? If not, we're looking for a motion to approve the 2017-2018 revised budget.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the 2017-2018 revised budget.
Looking for a second?
No, but I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, Mr. Mose, can you call the roll?
Maker of the motion, Bruce Henches.
Yes.
Second maker, Jeff Pulrice.
Yes.
Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Bruce Mose, yes. Monica Seguda Schwartz. Jerry Von Korf.
Yes.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of the 2018-2019 budget.
So again, this was reviewed in full detail last week, but we'll just briefly go through. The third line from the bottom is the excess of revenues and expenditures or over expenditures. The general fund, as we traditionally look at the general fund when we close out the year and we do the audit, the general fund is really broken down into 3 sub-funds, if you will. There's operating, transportation, and operating capital. For the general operating fund for the year, we're projecting an excess of revenues over expenditures of $64,149. Transportation, a slight excess of revenues, just over $15,000. The most significant activity out of these 3 funds for next year is a budgeted spend down of operating capital. So just under $500,000 is being proposed to spend down out of operating capital reserves. There's a number of items that are making up that spend down that we discussed last week. The 2 largest of those are for the ties dissolution costs and some purchase of some EL curriculum and materials. We have 2 special revenue funds. That's our food service and community education or community services. Generally, these funds operate at roughly a break even each year. That's what's projected, and traditionally they operate at a break even or better. We've seen some growth in the particularly community education fund balance over the years. That's predominantly due to the increases in funding in early childhood and school readiness programs. And so you'll see that continue to sit as a fund balance. That fund balance is being maintained so that we have some options in the event that the legislature does not extend the second round of voluntary pre-K funding. We may have that funding drop off, and so to be able to support those sections that are currently funded out of the non-renewable money at this point, we would have some reserves to be able to maintain that and roll that into the following year. Food Service Fund also has seen a fund balance, a pretty healthy fund balance starting to grow, and we anticipate that to continue into the future. Capital Projects Fund. At this point, our Capital Projects Fund is mostly expenditures. There is a little bit of money budgeted on the revenue side, which is just for interest on bond proceeds. And then for expenditures, there's 3 items that are budgeted for next year. The alternative facilities line is the completion of the HVAC project at Apollo. And then the building and other improvements line is the completion of Quarry View and our anticipated costs for the next fiscal year for the Tech High School construction. Debt Service Fund, budget for 18-19 is very comparable to the budget for 17-18. The large increase in the years presented really came from 16-17 to 17-18, when the bond payments and corresponding levy for the tech referendum jumped in to play. The one thing I do want to point out here is there's a fairly significant excess of revenues over expenditures and projected to have a fairly large fund balance at the end of the year. The reason for that is because statutorily we have to levy for 105% of our principal and interest payments to reflect delinquents. And so that's what we're projecting. If we don't have delinquency rates that high, we would see subsequent negative levy adjustments to take those funds back. Trust fund, every year we budget, it's break even. Money for the trust fund is in and out, which is why we don't anticipate that fund balance changing. We did have in 16-17 a large spend down of that. The funds that are sitting there, and the reason for that is we had one large scholarship that was transferred from the district over to LEAF to be able to take advantage of some investment opportunities that yield higher rates that the district isn't allowed to invest in. And then the internal service funds, we have 3 internal service funds for OPEB and then dental and health insurance. All of those projected to stay fairly flat and build a little bit. We have talk about the increases in health insurance here shortly. So we're projecting just a very small increase in that fund for next year. Are there any questions on the 18-19 budget?
Bruce?
I've actually got a couple of things. What is our general fund balance at the end of this year, the 17-18 year? Was it 8.5 million approximately?
What's it projected to be? Preliminarily, we're projecting it to the unrestricted is projected to be approximately 8.5 million.
And the budget that you are bringing forward projects a 10-point-some million dollar fund balance, general fund balance at the end of this next year. Is that correct? Did I read that correctly as you were going through that? It was one of the first.
One of the first slides.
Or it would have been in the general fund, on the general fund.
So this is the projected fund balances for the general fund at the end of this year.
Right. No, this was for you.
Further along.
Okay, so it's $8.5 million this year.
That's, yeah, at the end of the current fiscal year that we're just completing.
Now go ahead to the 18-19, down at the bottom left.
So that includes, so when you look at it in this presentation, that's not just the unrestricted. That's going to include the unrestricted, the legislatively restricted fund balances, like things like gifted and talented, alternative learning programs. And that 10 million also includes what's remaining in that assigned for future projects fund balance.
Did we have a figure that we project for unrestricted fund, general fund balance next year?
So the unrestricted is projected to hold flat. It would be staying roughly at that 8.5 million.
Okay. Then my second, I guess, question and comment is you mentioned the fund balance in community ed as being about $1.5 million, but that we need to hang on to that because we don't know what the legislature is going to do next year with voluntary pre-K.
Correct.
So I would just say that that's a strong message to the community that when we talk with legislative candidates, I think one of the questions that has to be asked is what is your position regarding the continuation, at least, if not the increase, in funding for the voluntary pre-K program? Because we're touching a lot of kids today in this district because of that those monies go away at the end of next school year. And so hopefully that'll be one of the questions that are asked. And then the last, or one of the questions that are asked of candidates. Then the last question I thought of as you were going through this is, what is the rate of interest? I know that we're really restricted as a school district in terms of how we can invest our funds. About what is the rate of return on, let's say, the trust funds that we have invested?
So the trust fund, typically you're not having the ability to do real long-term investments, just because interest rates historically over the last few years have been fairly low. And so it used to be 10 years ago that you could invest that long-term and you'd generate enough interest to pay out the scholarships that the families wanted to pay out in a given year. With rates and how much they've dropped, most of those scholarships that we're holding are having to tap into principal to be able to make those scholarship payments, or the families or the donors or whoever it might be continues to donate additional money. So we may see a percent.
Fraction or a
Yeah, or
percent or a
half a
fraction of
percent.
a percent, okay.
You know, when we start talking about bond proceeds in larger sums, we can sometimes get into some investments that are more long-term, and we can get a little bit better rates, but just nothing
Yeah.
significant.
Okay, thank you.
Question? If not, let's see, we need a motion on this one still?
I'll make the motion. Did you say you need a motion?
Don't we still need a motion on this one? We approved the,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
we
the
still need a
18,
motion on
19,
this one.
right.
Yep, so we need a motion.
Or did Bruce do it already?
Both at the same time?
Both what?
we
We already
already
did
did the other
17,
one.
18.
So we need a motion. So Jeff made a motion, so we're looking for a second.
Second. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, Mr. Moses, would you call roll?
Maker of the motion, Jeff Pulrice.
Yes.
Second maker of the motion, Monica Segura Schwartz.
Yes.
Jerry Von Korf.
Yes.
Bruce Henches.
Yes.
Bruce Mose, yes. Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Al Dahlgren.
Yes. Next, item C on our agenda is self-insured dental insurance premiums for 2018-2019. Tracy Flynn Bowe.
Good evening, Chair Dahlgren, Superintendent Jett, and board members. I'm here tonight to review the Labor Management Committee's recommendation for our self-insured health and dental funds for next year, for the premium rates for next year. You have the materials in your background materials. I'll start with the health plan. The Labor Management Committee represents all of our bargaining units and management groups of the district. We meet on a monthly basis. They met the last week of May to make the recommendations for next year's premiums. As you know, based on the work that we've been doing in bargaining the last 2 years, that we had an 11% increase in these rates in 2016-17, in 2016-17 was that rate increase of 11%, and that was precipitated by a very difficult year that we had in 2014-15, and without a reserve in the fund at that time to be able to sustain current rates. And so we did an 11% increase a year ago, or 2 years ago. Last year, the increase, again, recommended by the LMC was 16%, and so that's been the last 2-year history. When we met this year to review this year's claims experience, I think the news was good. The work we've done and the difficult decisions that LMC has recommended to the board to raise rates at pretty significant rates for the last 2 years has resulted in building a fairly significant reserve in 1 year. At this time last year, our reserve was about $63,000 in a fund that spends $17 million a year. The target reserve recommended by our consultant to these plans is about 30% of the plan spend, so about $5 million. During the course of this year, based on the change in rates and some other things that we did to the plan, we added a continuing deductible for pharmacy and did some other things that helped manage that fund, I think, more effectively. And so we are ending, at the time of our last meeting, we had built a reserve for this year of about $1.8 million. So we made almost a third of the way to our target reserve in 1 year, which was better than anticipated. We had a fairly good year in the plan this year. That may drop a bit because we know that we get a heavier spend in the summer months when teachers are now free to go make all of their appointments. But the projection is that we'll end the year with at least $1.5 million in the reserve fund. And so with that context, the question came in terms of what's the recommendation for the premiums for the coming year. And obviously the goal is, having done the hard work to get that reserve, we want to make sure that we're maintaining and growing that reserve. Our consultant the broker brought to the table 3 recommendations for the committee to look at what would it look like if we did a 2% increase, a 4% increase, and a 6% increase. I think in the ordinary course of things, it would have been the committee's recommendation to go at 4% because that is at least the inflationary cost of medical spend. The general rate of inflation on medical spend is somewhere between 4 and 8%, and so 4% probably would have been where we would have been looking. However, in light of the very significant increases that we've had in the last 2 years, we posed the question to the broker that would it be responsible, given the fund balance that we were able to develop this year, to do the 2% in recognition that employees have taken a very hard hit on those premium increases in order to get our plan kind of back into the shape that we needed to be in. And my question was it responsible from the management perspective to take a 2% and responsive to our employees and understanding that they've borne the larger portion of those increases over the last 2 years. I think with the history of the plan and the underwriting, the broker, while he said, and I think most of the committee felt, that again, in ordinary course of things, we would have been recommending 4. The committee felt that given the burden that's been placed on employees, that they were recommending the 2%, and the committee, as well as our consultant, felt like that leaves us well covered for this year. The caution out to the members of the plan will be that they shouldn't anticipate that 2% necessarily continuing, but that we're packaging that in terms of a 16% last year and a 2% this year. So you kind of think about averaging those out a little bit. I think if we continue to build that reserve, the projection is in the health plan that other plans that the brokers are managing that are our size have been experiencing, once you have a solid reserve, 2 to 4% increases a year, and that's been our goal since we hit that hard spot with our plan 2 years ago, is try to get that plan in a steadier place. So the good news is that we've really achieved that this year. The committee is recommending a 2% increase because this comes in the middle of a contract year. All of our labor contracts go from 2017 to 2019, and we have a cap on all of the district contributions in all of those contracts. That means that the employees will bear that 2% increase in year 2. So just so everybody's clear about that. Everybody on the committee was aware of that. They're recommending that. That will mean a change of about $15 a month in a single premium for employees and about $30 for a family premium. And so that is the recommendation with respect to the health plan. Anybody have questions about the health plan before I review the dental plan?
Jeff?
Refresh my memory of history. We had a 16% the first year I came on the board,
Yes,
and the employees bared all 16% of that?
yes. Well, no, because that would have been this first year of the contract. And so it was a 5% increase that the board picked up. Remember, we did the MOA at the start of this.
So we subsidized that 5%. The year before that was 0?
No, it was at 11%.
And how much of that did we subsidize?
The board actually, it would have been 15. The board subsidized 4.
Okay. In an ordinary year, it should be 4% according to the expert. And we're never going to be ordinary if we start doing 4%, because we're self-insured. Self-insured, your costs are supposed to be bared by the employees. We got to quit subsidizing the increases.
Absolutely. So the projections from the broker was that at the 2% for this year, barring some sort of a catastrophic year, we would still build $100,000 in our reserve. And so the reserve, and we're at 1.5 was the projection by the end of the summer.
And we should be at 5 million.
Yes.
So at gaining 100,000 a year, that might take us 20, 30 years?
I think we were talking about in the LMC as thinking about it as a 2-year deal. I mean, nobody anticipated that we would build 1.5 million in 1 year. I think, again, the changes in the premiums, the changes in the plan structure have really stabilized that plan. And so I think there's a fair amount of confidence that we're going to see, a similar kind of year next year. And again, that's always unpredictable because it's about the health concerns that come through that plan. But thinking about, the broker was surprised at this build that we had in 1 year. That was a good year, and thought that usually when he's starting with a brand-new plan and saying, we're going to build a reserve, you look at that over a 5 to 6 year arc. And so having made really good progress in the first year, thinking about this as a 2-year, that over the course of 2 years we could build 1.6 or 7 million in reserves, he thought was a good trajectory toward that 30%.
I'd like to see it at 4%, just speaking out loud.
Yeah. And Mr. Mose was on the committee, and so he was a participant in that discussion.
Bruce?
I was just going to make that remark. I've been on this committee for 3 years, and I've listened to and participated in these discussions. These groups on labor and management work very, very hard and work very diligently. And this isn't an easy decision for them always to make, but it was a decision this time that was supported by everybody in that room. I spoke as a representative of the board. I spoke in favor of it, and it was truly represented this evening as happened by our executive director. As a board member and as responsible to represent the board, I support this very strongly.
Mr. Chair, Tracy, just a question. Historically, how many years now have we been self-insured?
Since 13, 14?
13, 14. And so we as a district are satisfied that that was a good decision and that we're on the right course with our health insurance plans?
Absolutely. If you look at the fully insured plans, because the consultant that we have today, LMC, also manages the few remaining fully insured plans for a district our size, and they're seeing increases in the high 8, 9, 10 in double digits. And so I do think that our decision to go into a self-insured plan was a good one. I think, if we look retrospectively, I think the thing that probably we would have done differently in retrospect was not have held rates flat for those 4 years. But if we average the increases over the 5 years that we've been self-insured, they're running about 4 or 5% a year, and so that seems reasonable. Mr. Polaris, I certainly understand your concern, and I think everyone around the table at the LMC had the same concern. And I think we weighted that against the very significant increase in premiums that members have experienced, and the fact that it's coming in the middle of a bargaining cycle and they have no opportunity to cost share that with the board for next year.
Jerry?
We also, Bruce Mose was not just freewheeling here. The Personnel Committee was informed as this was going on. Would you take a motion to approve?
Yes.
I so move.
Do you want to approve the health separate from the dental? Or do you want me to summarize the dental? It's one recommendation as the board resolution is drafted.
If the chair wants it, I will move to approve both. And you can have discussion.
I know we can do discussion either way.
Yeah.
I'll take a motion.
I move to approve both items.
So we have a motion. Mr. Moe seconds, so we have a motion and a second. So Jeff, if you had a comment.
I just want to comment to get it on, to say it. We've been self-insured for 15 years?
No, 5.
5. Okay, then I misheard it. Okay, then I'll withdraw my question. I heard 15 and that.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? If not,
Do you want me to quickly summarize the dental plan?
yep, please summarize the dental.
That one's easy. We're recommending no increases in the dental. That'll be the 3rd year in a row with no increases. We made a switch this year from Health Partners to Delta, and we experienced some positive savings in that move. We have a very healthy reserve in the dental fund of approximately $500,000 at the end of this year, and that fund spends $1.2 million a year. So we're in very good shape on the dental plan and recommend no changes.
Any questions on the dental plan? If not, we have a motion, we have a second. Mr. Mose, can you call the roll?
Maker of the motion, Jerry Van Corp.
Yes.
Second maker, Bruce Mose. Yes. Monica Segura Schwartz.
Yes.
Bruce Henches.
Yes.
Jeff Polreis.
No.
Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next on tonight's agenda is Board of Education meeting schedule change, and that's Mr. Willie Jett.
Chair Dahlgren, members of the board, the following points are the basis for having both board meetings on Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. The first is to provide some consistency, not only for us as school officials and the board, but also for the public. The second, in holding board meetings and work sessions on Wednesday evenings, there is generally no conflict with student activities, and this will provide district administration, board members, and community members the opportunity to attend those events. And lastly, just as a reminder, our regular board meetings will continue to be at City Hall on the third Wednesday. The majority of the work sessions will be held at the new district office, with the exception of work sessions being held quarterly in various locations throughout the district as recommended by the Community Linkages Committee and the Board Development, Policy, and Governance Committees. And that's generally the rationale for the meetings on Wednesdays.
Jeff?
Willie, why the change from the second Wednesday to first and third? Was there a reason for that? Why didn't it end up second and fourth Wednesdays? Was there holidays or?
When Mary Kusterman was looking it up, I believe it was based on the availability here at City Hall.
Jerry, did you get your question answered on the TBD?
Worried about TBD, and I haven't had a chance to look at this, but I'm just worried about whether this is going to make these all special meetings. I'm used to a regular general meeting getting posted and set at the beginning of the year, and that meetings that are set during the year become special meetings, and there's a difference between them. And that was the question I was asking, whether it is possible to make, because a general meeting is open for business, all business, a special meeting is not, and you don't want to have special meetings. What happened tonight with the add-on and the agenda would not have been legal if it was a special meeting. So that, and I apologize, I've just been real busy this week. I would have spent some time on it, but
So can I ask a question?
yes.
For clarification's sake. So the reason that it's TBD today is because we're working out the schedule with sites.
I'm not worried about the TBD part of it. I'm worried about whether a meeting established in the middle of the year is a special meeting. Tracy's nodding her head. Do you know the answer to that?
I don't know the answer, but I understand more clearly your question.
Didn't
I
we,
want to be, okay, so a regular meeting is a meeting that is set and published or noticed in a particular way, and it is open for all business. You can put it on the agenda, you should put it on the agenda, but you can add it on the agenda at the last minute because it's open for all business. A special meeting is a meeting that's irregularly noticed, and it's only open for the special business that is placed on the special meeting notice. And the question I was asking was, are we turning all of our regular meetings into special meetings, because that would not be wise. And I'm sorry, I just, this week I haven't even, I'm just issue spotting here, and I was hoping that somebody might call our lawyer and.
I have a question.
Yes.
I don't understand what on here is making them a special meeting, because they're on
They're not
Wednesday?
the meetings we set at the beginning of the
We already
year.
set them, and now we're changing.
And it's as simple as that. I'm looking at the statute, no, I can't answer the question. I just don't want us to be turning those into special meetings.
So you're concerned about moving from Thursday to Wednesday, mainly because
Yep, I just think we need to know whether the impact of what we're doing, because we've been unable to do business at nothing but special meetings, because we often don't know what's going on the agenda 3 days before the meeting. Sometimes something comes up, and that's not a problem at a general meeting as long as the board will deliberate. So that's all I'm asking before we haul off and do that. And I apologize, I can't see the answer looking here, and I was hoping that somebody was going to ask that question.
So can we, if we just change the 2019 dates, would that be okay?
That's no problem, because we're doing that at the beginning of the year, and it may be possible to do this. See, the subdivision 1 says if the body decides to hold a regular meeting at time and place different from the time placed in schedule, then it gives a special meeting notice, but we may be able to amend the schedule. And there's a simple yes or no answer to that question. I just don't have it.
Bruce?
I'm looking.
What is the reason for changing the time of the board meetings from 7 to 6:30? So you explained that the Wednesday is preferable over Thursday because of activities and school activities and those kind of things. Why is the schedule changed too?
Strictly for consistency.
We could make that change to consistency as of the first of the year. I mean, it wouldn't
And
be
it may well be, I mean, it may well be that as long as we post the regular schedule and call them general meetings, that's going to be good enough.
Can we table this one until the next meeting?
What?
Tracy?
So I'm looking at the statute quickly. The last line in 13D04 sub 1, regular meetings, says if a public body decides to hold a regular meeting at a time or place different from the time or place stated in its schedule of regular meetings, it shall give the same notice of the meeting that is provided for in this section of a special meeting. So I think as long as we notice it, it doesn't convert it to a special meeting. I haven't studied the case law, but you could read it that way.
I wouldn't bet on that. I'd be more inclined to say that you can create a new general meeting schedule. I wouldn't advise.
No, I agree. But as long as we've given at least as much notice as a special meeting for a whole new slate of general meetings, I think that keeps us in the regular meeting paragraph.
I think there's a good argument for that, and I apologize. It's just that the consequence of messing with this and being wrong are not acceptable.
Mr. Chair, can we approve this dependent upon our attorney's interpretation of it? And if the attorney says, no, you can't do it, then, okay, then we just stay with our regular schedule. But making the change seems to make sense to me, and so it seems like I would move we approve it, dependent on, or whatever the terminology would be, and okay on the legality of doing that.
I'd second that.
Is that,
It
you
was
moved it?
It was a motion by me.
Okay, so you made a motion to approve it, contingent on the
Contingent is the
approval
word, yeah.
from our attorney that this is a proper and legal thing to do. And it was seconded by Mr. Von Korf.
Basically, we're asking them to confirm to us that we will not have turned these into special meetings.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
How soon would we know? I mean, a couple weeks, month? It's quick for the attorney, right?
Any further discussion?
October.
Seeing no discussion, Mr. Moses, would you call roll?
Maker of the motion, Bruce Henches.
Yes.
Second maker, Jerry Van Korf.
Yes.
Monica Segura Schwartz.
Abstain.
Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Jeff Polreis.
Yes.
Bruce Mose, yes. Al Dahlgren.
Yes. Item E, review and approve any tentative contracts. Tracy Bowe?
No contracts for approval, but just quick update for the board. We have 3 remaining groups. We scheduled mediation with the principals for Friday, July 13th, with nutritional services for July 16th, and with the clerical unit on the 17th of July.
Thank you. Superintendent's report, Mr. Willie Jett.
Again, Chair Dahlgren, members of the board, I only have 2 items for my superintendent's report this evening. The first, the Minnesota Positive Behavioral Interventions and Support State Leadership, and for everybody who knows, that's PBIS, announced that the following schools have been recognized as 2018 Sustained Exemplar PBIS schools. That's Clearview Elementary, Discovery Community School, Kennedy Community School, Oak Hill Community School, Talahi Community School, Westwood Elementary School, Apollo High School, Tech High School, and St. Cloud Early Childhood Programs. And last, my second item is just that our hearts and prayers go out for Mr. Gary Ganji, one of our executive directors, as he and his family are dealing with the passing of his mother and the funeral that was today. And that concludes my superintendent's report.
Thank you. Board Development, Policy, and Governance Committee, Shannon Hawes.
We have not met. We meet next week.
Community Linkages and Engagement, Bruce Mose.
We met on June 14th, and we will not meet in July. Next meeting will be in August. At our June 14th meeting, Monica and Tammy Deland conducted that meeting as a continuation of the meeting of the month before. After the approval of the agenda, discussion ensued on the district communications plan, and I'll let Monica take us through that conversation.
So in the last meeting in the linkage committee, the meeting previously, we started looking at the communication plan of the district. And for this meeting, we continue that conversation about what is the communication plan of the district and how the linkage committee could support better that recommendation. We were looking at some parts of communication, branding of the school district, and some activities that the district has done specifically for outreach, what those are and what represent. At the end of the meeting, one of the recommendations that Tammy had for us was that we will look at that it will be good to choose a topic or an area that we will focus as a linkage during the year to work on. There were several areas that we were discussing that could be possible. For example, activities outside of the district, engagement of students, student recruitment or retention, image of the district, those type of topics. We like that idea, and we were thinking that we should discuss it further. But in general terms, that was an idea that we like for the linkage committee. So I think that was pretty much our conclusion of the meeting.
Mr. Henches, is there anything you'd add to that? That's our report.
Thank you. Next is the Finance and Audit Committee, Jeff Polrice.
Finance Committee met June 14th. Attendance was Scott Andreasen, Al Dahlgren, Willie Jett, Jeff Polrice, Monica Sakura Schwartz, Amy Skellerud, Lori Posch. We talked about 3 things: property and liability insurance, as we discussed tonight; preliminary budget, as we discussed tonight; Dyslexia update, we discussed last board meeting. You do have the notes in front of you. End of the report.
Thank you. Legislative Committee, Bruce Henches.
The Legislative Committee did not meet this month.
Personnel and Negotiations, Monica Segura Schwartz. The Personnel Negotiations Committee met on June 4th. We discussed the planning of the closed session that we had during the last work session for the negotiation strategies. We also look at the insurance premiums 2018-19 that Tracy presented today, and we look at some administrative changes and the superintendent evaluation.
Thank you. Achievement, Integration, and Equity, Jerry Van Korf.
We did not meet. We are meeting on the 27th.
Thank you. That's it for the committee reports. Future agenda items, I'm just going to make the announcement that there will be no work session in July, so the next board meeting will be the City Hall meeting scheduled in July, which is, I think, on the 24th. I don't want to say it. 26th. Thursday, July 26th at 7 p.m. will be our next meeting. And we are now going to, I'm looking for a motion to close, what, Jeff? Future items. Yep, that was it. Next, we're looking for a motion to close the board meeting for the routine evaluation of the superintendent.
I move.
And I just to make an announcement for all of the people in attendance here that we will not be, when we do come back out, we will not be conducting any other business after that. So this would be the end of the open portion of the school board meeting. You're certainly welcome to stick around if you would like to, but you do not have to.
Yeah. I did
yes.
want to add a future agenda item for next board meeting.
Okay, we're going to back up to the future agenda items.
I'd like to see us get gymnastics on the agenda. We need to discuss this thoroughly, and let's decide one way or the other.
And yep, and we can discuss that at agenda planning also.
Okay.
So we have a motion, looking for a second to close for the routine evaluation
I'll
of the
second.
superintendent. We have a motion. We have a second. Any discussion? If not, Mr. Mose, would you call roll?
Maker of the motion, Monica Segura Schwartz.
Yes.
Second maker, Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Jeff Fulrice.
Yes.
Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Jerry Van Korf.
Yes.
Bruce Henches.
Yes.
Bruce Mose, yes.
Okay, so we are now going to move into closed session.